triggers. Yeah. So normally when I discuss with people fighting fair, which I think we've already done earlier this year, there's rules for fighting fair, and labels should not be used because labels are definitely triggers for people. And in fact, there are certain sentences that people use that can also be triggers. You know what I mean? Like they just sort of say things in a certain way, and that actually also can be triggers for people. But labels definitely, if you're going to say, you're useless or you're lazy or, like what's wrong with you? Why can't you do that?
It's not helpful for conversation, is it really?
No, but it's normally when people get annoyed with other people. And they'll use those sort of words actually. Now, if there's an expletive in front of it, of course, that more or less emphasizes it for the person who says it, but it becomes very detrimental to the person who listens to it. And after a while, what happens is that people then don't hear the labels anymore, or they'll just get upset, or they'll walk away, or they'll say something back, which is another label of sorts. And, what about you? And so those sort of things, no, definitely don't work. They are definitely.
Well, labels kind of seem to escalate things, don't they? And it kind of blocks conversation. Like if you're having a conversation with someone and they say, "Oh, well, you're just an idiot,"
Yeah.
That's kind of the end of the conversation, really, isn't it?
Yeah, most definitely. Or the other person will just get defensive, or they shut down and walk away. So it's normally one of those responses, but you can't have a discussion. But normally people use labels because they're frustrated with the person, or they're losing the argument. So they're having a discussion and they know they're losing it. And so I'll just throw out this label to either shut the person down, let them know that I'm not interested in what you're saying, or I don't care, or you know what I mean. And so labels often used when there's a certain amount of tension already in the discussion. Like people rarely come in with a label straight off, unless they see they haven't done something and they go, "Why haven't you done da da da, you lazy?" Because they're really upset. But normally you're fairly heightened if your voice goes, like really, like what's wrong with you? Or, you're the worst car parker in the place. Can't you just what is it with you that you can't park the car properly in the driveway? Look, you got to be on, so those sort of things are frustrating, and then you're such a useless driver or useless at parking.
But labels can be very general as well. If somebody says, "Oh, you're useless at driving," like, what are you supposed to do with that? You know what I mean? Like a label, it's not specific. Like I'd rather someone say, "Hey, when you did this, that," then you go, "Okay, well, I know what we're dealing with now." But if you say, "Oh, you're just hopeless," something or other, you have no idea what to even do with that.
Well, normally people come with a comeback, and they'll say for example, you say, "Oh, look, you're useless at parking a car in the driveway. Why can't you just park it on the left so I can get it on the right?" So that might be an argument people have. And the other person might say, "Oh, what? So you're the perfect driver, are you?" With that contemptuous voice, and they'll just throw something back. And of course, after that, it can either escalate, or some people will just, "Okay, back off now. Like we don't want to go down that path."
Yeah.
But labels come after you've already began a discussion, or it's a trigger of something that the person's done over and over and over again, and now you're just tired of it at some point, and you'll just throw it out there. But I suggest, don't use it, because it'll definitely escalate. What you're doing is you're just letting out your own personal frustration at some point, and if the other person's frustrated with you over something else, that'll come back to you too. You see, so it's don't use it.
Can I also say, and I think it's linked, but it's not the same thing, is generalizations. Like my wife and I the other day, and I love her dearly, but she said, "You always do this. You never ever do that."
They're superlatives.
And I'll say, "Never ever." I said, "I yesterday did this." And she's like, "Well, I know, but you never do it." And I say, "But I did it yesterday." And then she's like, and I'm like, "So maybe you can say I rarely do this,
Yes.
but not never ever, because I do that." Like it's hard to have conversations with that.
Yeah, that's true. Those words are superlatives, so never, always. They're the two actually that people often use. Yeah. So when I hear that, I actually don't use those in my conversation with Joe at all, because I know that it's probably not true, most likely. But what it means is that there's a person doing a repetitive behaviour, or they're they're just letting you down over and over and over again, because you just have an expectation that they should do this or they ought to do that, but they're not doing it. And then you'll go.
And she probably had a point, you know. I mean, she probably had a point, but I kind of missed the point because I got stuck on the never bit, and I'm just like, hang on, never really, you know. But I'm sure she had a point to what she was saying, but we kind of lost the point because I got stuck on the never.
Yeah, the best thing to do, how to approach that, is to go, darling, you know what? I'd really appreciate it if you supported me more, and then talk about what it is you never do, because then you can say, because I feel like I'm always doing this by myself. Or I feel this is my load, and I really like to share it with you. Because often we feel the load sometimes in running a household, because, you know, we get into a habit of doing our own jobs and our own way of doing things, and then it's not really appreciated, or there's an expectation that we should do this all the time, and then the other person doesn't do it, and then they'll feel as though, look, well, you never, or you always. So you got to talk about sharing the load probably at that point.
But there's also, and again, I don't want to go too far down this track because I'll get myself in trouble. But there's also what people see and what people don't see as well.
That is true. You are correct there. So
like sometimes someone's perception of what you're doing and what you're actually doing can often be two different things.
Yeah, and there's no question about that, particularly about keeping things tidy around the place, actually. So when it comes to chores, so the person who does the chores feel like, you know, they're putting a lot of energy into it. They've got to think about it. I have that sometimes. You know, I'm just doing these chores, so I've got to think about it, because Jo doesn't think about it because she doesn't see it. So she's wired differently, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then I feel like I do it, but if I leave it, she won't see it to do it. You know what I mean? There's just some things she doesn't see.
Sorry, I got a sidetrack there, didn't I? We were talking about labels and when I went on a different tack.
Yeah, but nevertheless, what we're talking about, though, is things that can annoy us fairly quickly. And so labels annoy us when we feel like we're being taken for granted. That annoys us. When we feel like we're only doing this particular task all the time, we're not sharing the load, those things can annoy us. And those things then heighten the tension in us. And then sometimes we'll just blurt it out. But we can't have a conversation about it where we agree, can we do this differently?
So what do we do? What's the approach?
You've always got to have a discussion, starting with, this isn't working for me. That's the line I normally use. Or could you please? Or, you know, it'd be really helpful if you could help me with this. I feel as though I'm carrying this by myself all the time. I often hear that, actually, particularly for women. They tend to carry, for example, children's appointments to doctors, dentists, and that sort of thing. And it's like as though they feel as though this is my job. But why is this my job? It's just that the male partner often thinks, well, you know how to do it. You've got all this in hand, you know. And so sometimes people get a little bit frustrated because they're doing the same tasks all the time, but they're not being supported, or the other person's not taking it on now and then. And then I say, you never take the kids to an appointment.
Never. Really? I never do. Really? Hans, you know I do. You've seen me at appointments.
But that's